Good afternoon. Welcome to 2026. I'm District 3 Commissioner Dan Cooper. This is the Jefferson County PUD Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, January 6th, 2026. At this time, it'd be a good time to turn off any devices you have, telephones, that sort of thing, so we don't get an interruption with that. So I'm calling this to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both visual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. So with that, I'll call roll call for a quorum.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner for District 1.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
And Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3. We have a full board today. And as you can see, we have a new seating arrangement. We are rotating our seats. I will currently be, for the next 2 years, the president of the board. Commissioner Collins will be vice president and Commissioner Randall will be secretary. So that's our new rotation, hence the seating change. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I'll move to accept the agenda.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So with that, we will move on to public comment, item number 4 on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience? I don't see anyone from the public. So anybody online who wishes to speak, you'll have 3 minutes. I see Mr. Boyd has his hand up. Leo, go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes. Are you muted?
I'd just like an update on the status of the low-income facilities transport rate.
So is that all that you need at this point, Leo, or do you have any other comment?
That's it for now.
Okay. Before we respond to any questions, I'll see if there's anyone else who wants to speak. We'll come back to Leo's question. Anyone else? I thought I saw another hand pop up there. I see, is it Mr. Shook?
Short.
I can't. What? Short. Short? Okay, I can't read it from here. So, Mr. Short, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is in regards to 661 Nest Corner Road. We have 4 water meters that are on our property, 2 of them that do not belong to us, that belong to the next door neighbor. All 4 of those were compromised during the sewer install over the past 1.5 years. And 2 of those boxes have been crushed and are leaking. We put in a request order 2 months ago and still have no resolve to the situation. And we have now received another bill for $1,429 because the broken water main leaking in the box is being charged to us. And the problem is we have had a couple of PUD workers out there. One of them was extremely helpful because he is the one who installed those meters 30 years ago. He was very informative on what was going on out there. And we have proven to PUD that the electronic signals that are on your computer are exactly reversed from the meters that we do not own. The meters that are leaking belong to Luann Short. The Short they have been divorced for over 25 years. And the electronic metering, when you guys changed your computer 4 years ago, you mixed up some signals and they need to be re-verified because we believe we are owed approximately $6,000 in money that we have been paying for Luann Short's water bill for her storage unit next door.
Is that the extent of your comments, Mr. Short?
Yes. At this time, I would like to reiterate that I have been down to the office 5 or 6 times with my daughter, with my son-in-law, and we have over and over and over again tried to fix this problem. And now we find out last week that you have turned off the water to a 77-year-old disabled woman who lives on the property because this bill was not paid for $1,429. So now we have a disabled woman living on the property because your computers are wrong. You have now shut off her water. And we would like to have this situation resolved as soon as possible because we have tried over and over again to deal with Juan or Jose or whoever it is that's the water person. And unfortunately, he has failed at every step of the way to resolve this situation.
So you're at 3 minutes, Mr. Short. I think we get the point.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. We don't do back and forth at our business meetings, but I will ask the general manager to maybe give us an update on this particular or part of his staff if he refers to staff. So we'll get to that here in a few moments. Are there any other questions or comments today during public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and refer to the general manager maybe if he has any feedback on first Mr. Boyd's comments about, I know this was something that came up before the board at the end of last year at one of the meetings, so I don't know if there was any follow-up that we had promised or where we are with that. I'll pass it off to the general manager for comment.
So I'm aware that the commission requested a low income rate for a wholesale situation, and staff has not grappled with that situation yet. So we don't have a response yet. So it's understood that the commission has made that request, and staff will respond.
So I guess Jeff was in charge at the time. Maybe you had some more on it, but timeline. Do we have any timeline in mind here?
So I did have a conversation with Mr. Boyd before this meeting. I followed up with the PUD attorney, Joel, to ask if it was on his radar yet and if he was working on it yet. And he said, not yet. So I don't have any more information than you have. I recalled the same direction that we directed staff to see what you can come up with. Is this an issue that we can do something about? And there was interest on the board level. So Joe, I know you've got lots of things on your plate, and I don't know if this is something that any other providers have dealt with. You know, how do you provide a low income rate to a wholesale ISP and then ensure that that wholesale discount flows through to the customer? Because the customer is not ours. The customer in this case is the wholesale, is the retail ISP. So I guess that's part of the challenge. If we do it, how do we ensure that the money, the savings are flowing through the actual customer? And since it's a contract, it seems like anything's possible, but I don't, how you do that is the question.
So I guess just one question I would have. I know we don't want to belabor the point. Does the board have a specific idea of how long we think this should take before, so that Mr. Boyd doesn't have to keep asking us for this over and over? Do we have any inclination as to what we see how this should move forward?
Well, I guess from my perspective, maybe not the next meeting, but the first regular board meeting of February, if we could at least have some work and some thoughts on, the issues. Is that a reasonable request?
Because maybe Joel, I don't know if Joel, since you referenced the legal counsel, maybe Joel knows, is there any other research that needs to be done? Do we have all the information we need? Joel?
I think we have most things, but would probably be I'm guessing this is, not my area of expertise, but there's probably some operational and billing concerns about how all this comes together and how you actually um, do this consistent with the discussion. And the discussion, as I recollect, was that this really wasn't a program for wholesalers. It was a program for low-income customers. Um, and more, I just operationally, I'm not sure how that would work. So I'm happy to work with staff on pulling that together. Getting a little bit extra time to have the discussions would be helpful.
Well, and Joel, just speaking for myself, the reason I brought it up was because we know that all the occupants of this building are low income qualified. And in this case, we have a retail ISP that is not us providing the service. And currently, according to that retail ISP, offering them an excellent rate. And what I didn't want to see happen was by our changing our wholesale rates, having a negative impact upon the rates that those customers have to pay.
Yeah.
So
No, I understand that, and
I think
that's
it
one
might need
element to it.
it might need a little creativity on our part, because I just hate for us to say, well, we're following the rules, but then we have a bad outcome. How can we avoid the bad outcome is what I'm trying to do.
So I know we had a little catch up on that because not everybody was at the last meeting. I don't know how much people have reviewed. So that's the reason I've allowed this conversation to this point. I don't plan on taking any more comment from Mr. Boyd at this time. He'll have to reach out to whomever he feels he needs to reach out from this point moving forward. So with that, I'm going to.
Could we ask for maybe a date to bring
Well,
that back?
I hate to set us on a date. We've ran into trouble when we try setting arbitrary dates when not all the information's on the front. I'll leave that to the general manager. I'll leave it at his discretion at this point,
Okay.
if that's okay with the board.
Yeah.
From my perspective, the timing is based on whether this has been a previously solved problem with another PUD in the state. I'm not aware that it has. If it's a novel solution, it's going to take longer than February. So I would, if it's novel, I would give us at least the year.
That's
So a work in progress is what I'm hearing here. So maybe at the next meeting, we'll tackle this again if there hasn't been any resolution at that point and make more determinations about a better timeline. Does that sound reasonable to you, commissioners?
yeah. I may
Okay.
work on it on my own. That seems like
Okay.
a long time.
I've never heard of a retail discount for a wholesale service. So this is potentially not something that's doable, but maybe it is. So we don't know yet.
So we'll move on to Mr. Short at 661 Van Ness Road. The damage that took place was done by the county, I'm assuming. It sounded like during the course of the sewer expansion. So I don't know, what, again, he threw a lot out there, and it's the first time the commission has heard this. So you'll have to bear with us, Mr. Short. We don't usually allow for rebuttal or anything like that. So there'll be a little bit of discussion here if the general manager or his staff want to weigh in on this.
This is the first I've heard about it as well.
I'll look into it and call him no later than tomorrow.
Okay, so
I guess,
Commissioner?
yeah, just to clarify the issue. So I think the one thing we need to confirm is who did the damage. And I'm not sure if Mr. Short realizes that it's presumably the county that's responsible, or their contractors. If damage is done, I'm sure they have a process that they go through to address things, that we make sure we get the right people involved. And then this whole other thing about the meter stuff is a separate but complicated
Well, and I think
issue.
the second question there, as I'm interpreting what I heard there a little bit, is that our response to known damage may not have been what this customer expected. So again, I don't know all the detail. I'm not going to point fingers or lay blames at this point, but yes, we do need to distinguish who was responsible for what and at what point, if we're going to determine cost or not charging for something that has been billed.
Yeah, and I heard a concern that the meters weren't mapped to the right
Yeah.
account, so we've got to verify
Yeah.
that.
So we'll have, okay, Joe, you have a staff member. Do you want another staff member to speak?
Joe,
Oh, go ahead, Gene.
Jeff,
Go ahead, Gene.
Jeff Gordon reached out to both Jose and myself today about this one. I have looked into the old service orders for the meter swap, and it was reviewed. I will go in tomorrow with Jose and go through those old service order notes. And I'll help Jose with whatever he needs.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, is there a way to verify a radio signal we're getting is coming from a physical? Because I presume you could go and look at, okay, this physical meter's got the water shooting out of it.
We have apparatuses that will help us determine.
Okay.
We have re-verified that numerous times, that the water meter that is leaking is spinning like crazy, and it's not on our property.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Short. I think we're going to move on. Jose said he is going to reach out to you again, so we'll just see if we can get this to play out in a smooth fashion and get some resolution to everything that you brought forward there. All right, so with that, we will move on to general manager and leadership reports.
So I wanted to take this opportunity to review the storm event. It was a significant multi-day storm event on December 16th and 17th. We had a wind gust coming through the service territory of about 43 miles per hour on middle of the night. Westerly gust, which is not our normal predominant wind gust, so it caused more damage than it would have been if it was a 43 mile an hour. Apparently we had almost a 50 mile an hour this morning and modest amount of damage. So wind direction really makes a difference when it's when the trees are not used to bearing that kind of load from various directions. The wind then shifted from westerly to southeast and continued gusting into the 18th up to 36 miles an hour. We lost 8,370 customers at the peak of the event. Had a number of full feeder outages. We lost line taps, individual transformers, and just had a lot of damage at about 132 damaged locations across our service territory. This was a regional event. We had, not we, but the state experienced about 260,000 customer outages in the same time frame. So a lot of utilities were relying on all of their resources and in many cases their neighbors, and we were not alone in that. We reached out for help from our neighbors, and Mason PUD number 1 responded quickly. We unusually asked for help only 3 hours into the event. In my experience, that is a very early activation of mutual aid, and so I had nothing to do with it. I appreciate the team while I was on vacation making that request and engaging their support. And we had all of our customers restored. Basically, from the first event, we didn't have all of them restored. Then new damage occurred from the second blow, and both the initial event damage and the subsequent event damage was all restored by 7 o'clock on the 18th, which pretty much got power back on in time to watch a spectacular football game. And really, in a large part, that had to do with Mason coming out and helping us out. So we had our R2 full line crews. We had a PUD service crew. One of our contract tree crews came out and helped, and the 2 Mason 1 PUD line crews. All of that support really was essential to fairly rapid response to 132 damage locations. Our dispatching team had a tremendous amount of work to sift through and allocate resources to. We had our engineering team out doing damage assessment to help set up the crews for success so that they would know what materials and damage they were going to be facing when they came onto a new job site. And of course, our customer service team were fielding customer calls throughout both days. So it really was a broad team effort, and really proud of how the team responded. We also had cooperation from the Jefferson County Public Works team. The City of Port Townsend Police helped us out in a particular event where a pole was failing. Jefferson County Sheriff's Department and East Jefferson Fire and Rescue all supported PUD efforts to make the system safe, get traffic impacts from trees and down wires resolved, and basically get our infrastructure and road infrastructure functioning again. So there's a few pictures that Shannon pulled together so you could see the broad distribution of damage locations in the map on the right. Our crews actively working that storm event in the other pictures. So that wasn't the only significant event. That was our electrical event in December. And then it was last week, we had a vehicle hit a fire hydrant very close to our reservoir. So it had a pretty solid water source behind a damaged water main, where the mechanical damage from the car hitting the hydrant transferred to water main and caused the water main to leak. And so you see this tremendous amount of excavation that our water team, with two civil contractors working alongside them, excavated to the damaged location and sleeved the main and repaired the hydrant. So again, a very significant emergency response effort that successfully restored service to our customers. We had over 400 customers that were out of water, but somehow I still am learning how water conducts their business, but they were able to maintain positive pressure on the main, which caused us to not have to issue a boil order, which would have been obviously additionally impactful to all of our customers. So tremendous skill on their part to be able to actively repair this line while it still had positive pressure, thus negating a need to do a lot of flushing and boiling as a result. Anything to add to that, Jose?
You did a great job.
Yeah.
Looks like it was pretty deep too.
Yeah, about 15 yards or so of backfill.
So we are going to ask the commissioners to sign a letter of thanks to Mason 1 PUD. So we'll be circulating that for signature if Shannon hasn't already done that. The final thing that I wanted to make the commission aware of is, besides the 3 state auditor office engagements that we currently have on various activities, we also have our financial auditor firm starting. So Tyler Kennedy is with BSGM, and he's here to perform a financial audit of the PUD. One of those SAO audits is to review that audit, and then they're doing the CIP, and then they have an accountability audit going on with this as well. So a lot of financial scrutiny going on right now with the PUD, which is scheduled and planned and part of our annual activities. That summarizes the general manager's report.
So excuse me. So I guess I know you weren't present, but this was the first really large event that we had as far as outages go. So I was kind of curious as to your take. You obviously gave a good report, and we had a lot of outside help and good job done by our employees. Were there any takeaways when you review how things went as a new GM? The tree trimming, we're looking at doing more aggressive tree trimming. Was this something that we can look at and say certain areas are going to be more needed for the tree trimming to help in these type of instances? Was there any takeaways from the GM's viewpoint of how we dealt with this one and how we would plan for the next one, so to speak?
So every event offers an opportunity to reflect on, and so we did that. I interviewed I interviewed all the line crews and had 5 other interviews with folks that played key roles. So just to be clear, I was en route back here on the first day of the storm, still on PTO. So I was basically monitoring the afternoon and come in hot to right in the middle of the storm and with the team through the second day. Was able to greet the Mason crews when they showed up on the property, that sort of thing. So did have an opportunity to debrief with people that were playing a significant role, staff that were playing a significant role, and spent some time debriefing with our mutual aid partners. So yes, there's things, again, every event affords itself an opportunity. This event, unfortunately, we had some non-wind related outage that was going on just prior to the wind getting here. So our crews were already working an underground outage leading up to the wind event. So that's one takeaway is our normal MO is to jump on every outage as they come up. There's potential to see a significant event coming at us and marshal resources in a way that sets us up better for being able to move through that whole thing. But we had our incredibly dedicated crews already were working into 40 hours straight. So we need to manage that and make sure that we're not asking people to work beyond what is a reasonable threshold for taking a a break and that sort of thing. So multi-day events create special challenges for us, especially when we only have 2 full line crews. So there's opportunities there to think about going forward.
Yeah, thank you. And, I didn't get any feedback. It sounded like our partners at the county and our mutual aid that we got from another PUD and those sorts of things, all the communication, it seems like it went pretty well with those outside organizations. So I was at the fire chiefs meeting and they didn't reference any negative stuff out of the outage. They didn't even talk about the outage. So that's a good sign that we were communicating well. So that's always another important factor. Okay. Anything further from the general manager and staff? Okay, with that, we'll move on to commissioner reports. Commissioner Randall, would you like to
Sure, I'll go
lead
first.
us off?
On December 10th, I flew to Spokane for the end of the year NOAANET board meeting, and the meeting itself wasn't super eventful. They did have a dinner that evening for NOAANET staff, and NOAANET staff is spread all around the state. So it's kind of the one time per year, to my knowledge, that they all come together. And it was really interesting. I don't know if either of you have been at an event with NOAANET staff, but they're really young, a young group. And it seems like there was somewhere like 80 or 90 staff. So it was a big number of people. And it was really interesting to get a little more insight into the culture of NOAANET because we are a member of them. They are moving forward. I think in February is our next meeting. We'll have Bigfoot LLC, which is an LLC of the Colville tribe, is going to be on the agenda for bringing them forward. There have been some questions by some members, and it seems like they've all been addressed, but we'll find out in February if they're brought on board as a new member, and that would be the second new board member or owner member of NOAANET coming on since late last year. Let's see. And their next meeting is February 11th, and I'm planning to do that one by Zoom since I'll have my son that time. The holiday gathering was great that we had with the ICG, was there for that. On the 18th of December, I met with a customer, Will Frary, and I forwarded some questions to Joe that I need to get back to Mr. Frary on. We have a chance. Had a phone meeting with Joe Wilson on the 31st of December. On, looking forward on the 7th, I'll be remote on the PPC member forum. On the 8th, we have an EDC board meeting, and we're looking to adopt a strategy for the EDC for the next 2 years, which is really what are we kind of holding staff to accomplish and measurables for the EDC. And then I'll be in that audit entrance special meeting that we just scheduled for the 9th. And then 14th through 16th, I'll be doing a combination of in-person and Zoom participation in the WAPUTA meetings in Olympia, and that is my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Collins?
I just have to comment. Was that your graduation picture up there, Joe?
Oh, it's the last professional picture I've had taken.
He's already got that much gray hair since we hired him in August. That's.
I don't let him take my picture anymore after that one.
So, had a meeting with legal counsel on the 10th of December, met with customers on Marrowstone Island on the 16th to talk about a major leak that they'd experienced on their property. Had a meeting on the 19th with Kevin Camfield, who is one of the people on Beckett Point's committee having to address sewer rates, and met with the general manager on the 22nd and again on the 29th and also on the 5th of January. The meeting again with the general manager on the 12th. I'll attend remotely part but not all of the WAPUTA meeting, the 14th through the 16th, and look forward to a meeting with the general manager on the 20th. Oh, and I should have mentioned I will attend the audit meeting on the 9th. And that's my report.
All right. Thank you, commissioners. So I attended the ICG meeting on December 11th, and I also attended the WAPAG meeting earlier that day. I met with General Manager Wilson on December 22nd. I attended the Jefferson County Fire Chiefs meeting on January 5th. I'm going to attend the PPC meetings on January 7th and 8th virtually. I also have a Waputa Executive Committee meeting on the 7th. I'll also be at the state entry audit on Friday the 9th. I meet with General Manager Wilson on the 12th of January, and I will attend the Waputa events in Olympia on January 14th to 16th. And that concludes my report. Anything else? Okay, we will move on to item number 7, consent agenda. I think I would like to pull one item off and a little bit of discussion on that one. That's 7.8, the resolution for appointing RUS Connect certifiers. So I think maybe we'll put that on at the end of new business,
I have no objections.
like that 9.3 on new business. Yes. Okay.
So move to approve the consent agenda as modified.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. So with that, excuse me, we move on to unfinished business. For the unfinished business section discussions, please hold public comment until each presentation is done, but before a vote. And I see we have Sergey online, it looks like. Are we connected up with Sergey? Is someone on staff going to introduce? And we'll go from there.
Yeah. Thank you, Sergey, for joining us again. This is a follow-up to our, I believe it was December 2nd meeting where we walked the board through a proposal to have sewer or wastewater rates cover their costs and not lean on the water utility, and then a proposal to make sure that the water utility is covering its costs going forward. So we had a number of commissioner questions, and Sergey is going to be prepared to walk us through the response. Go, Sergey. Floor's yours.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And
Okay.
thank you,
Sergey, real
commissioners.
quick. Yep.
Yeah.
Quick, do you want commissioners to weigh in as we go along or wait to specific breaks in the discussion or?
I think as always, feel free to ask questions as we go along. It's going to be a fairly brief general presentation, and we can dive into questions as you have them.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Well, Happy New Year, everybody, and thanks for taking the time to continue our discussion regarding the water and sewer rate study. We'll do a quick overview and run through the introduction. We're going to just remind everybody of the process that goes into these type of studies. We're going to talk about the prior results and then mainly focus on the requested alternatives that the board had for us at the end of the meeting on December 2nd. So kind of focusing today's discussion on that follow-up alternative. As I just mentioned, feel free to ask questions as we go through those results. Now, a quick reminder, you're well aware of the rate study process, so this is just high-level educational content, but typically these type of studies include multiple steps that have to be performed sequentially. Step number 1 is referred to as revenue requirement, where we look at the big picture for each utility with the emphasis that we want to make sure that each utility can be self-sufficient on a standalone basis. We want to make sure as best as possible that our rates for water utilities are supported by water rates and sewer customers are supported by sewer rates. Here we do look at things from a high level perspective, just focusing on making sure that we can meet our obligations and not really looking at which class of service or customer is paying for what cost, just looking at the total revenues and total expenses. Step number 2, typically referred to as a cost of service analysis, looks at allocating costs and answering questions such as do cost differences exist to provide service to different type of customers. Here we look at interclass cost allocation, trying to identify really is it more or less to provide service to a residential customer versus a commercial customer and so on. And then lastly, rate design. This is where we developed actual fixed and variable charges, if applicable, to provide service to different customers, collecting the dollars identified in the first 2 steps. Now, the last comprehensive study completed for the PD was in 2021. We performed all 3 steps at that point in time. The first step, revenue requirement, identified a deficiency, and we prepared a 5-year rate strategy for each utility to get our systems to get to self-sufficiency and making sure that we were able to support the cost during that 5-year plan at that time. The second step, the cost of service analysis, was performed for the water utility. We did look at the major class of service, residential, commercial, and so on. And we did find that the major class of service were within a range of reasonableness of cost of service, so no additional adjustments were proposed at that time. So we're doing really well from that perspective. For the sewer utility, we discussed multiple options, and the result looked at separating our rates into several different type of systems, including the standard system rates, Calipoint rates, and Beckett point systems. Lastly, on the rate design, that third step. Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Colin or Randall has a question.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Sergey, so when we did that previous rate study in 2021, did we look at the sewer rates at that point?
We did look at sewer rates, yes.
We did, okay. But is the issue of the water subsidizing the sewer new, or were we aware of it back then?
We introduced the concept and we started to make progress towards it, but we did not resolve it all on one time.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted a little reminder because I couldn't, because when we look at the rates now, the water looks good and the sewer is really out of whack, and I wasn't sure how much we looked at that back then. Thank you for going over that.
No problem. And then the last step, rate design for the water utility. The first item in order that we addressed was that we transitioned rates to a one system structure. Here, focusing mainly on classes of service. So we did have slight differences for rates throughout the system, different points of the system, and we moved the rate structures to be more class specific. So everybody within the system that was residential had the same rate structure. Everybody who was commercial had the same rate structure. We also made a couple small modifications to how the fees were assessed. Previously, the single family residential rates were the same no matter what size meter you had. We made small adjustments to introduce meter-based rates. And then lastly, to help us fund some of the capital plan that we had in the debt service, we started to introduce the concept of a capital surcharge, just of a separate fee that was dedicated to help us accrue funds to help with the capital program and any associated costs like the debt service. For the sewer utility, we did develop an initial 5-year strategy trying to move our sewer rates in total and by system towards cost-based rates. So a 5-year plan was developed. Now, as the plan was implemented, some of the rates were held constant, which were related specifically to Beckett Point. Once the 2022 rates went into effect, no additional adjustments were made, even though there was a 5-year phase-in forecasting a need for additional increases. So some of those rates were held in 2022 base levels. Now, as the new study update commenced about a year or so ago, focusing for the sewer side, because we did address the electric system as our first phase of the engagement, and then transition to the water and sewer utility as our second phase of the study update. We've been working with your staff to update an analysis, and we brought back some of the preliminary findings for the board's review during the meeting in last December 2nd. Just some high notes from that discussion. We did find that overall our rates were not quite sufficient to meet our operating expenses for both the water and sewer utilities. And in order to meet those deficiencies, we identified 2 scenarios for consideration, just as preliminary scenarios. The main differences were between scenarios is that under scenario 1, we tried to get the sewer utility to self-sufficiency as soon as possible. So a front end type of an adjustment that would get the sewer utility to self-sufficiency in year 1 of the plan in 2026, meeting all operating needs as well as financial policy reserve targets and cash targets in the same year of 2026. We also looked at a more gradual approach that took a couple of years to phase in the sewer utility adjustments. So under this approach, we looked at getting to self-sufficiency under operating perspective, so not relying on the water utility or division to meet operating ongoing costs by 2028, so a 3-year plan. And then a little bit more stretched out approach to get to financial policy reserves and targets all the way out to 2036, again with the preliminary forecast. So it was a 2-pronged approach, trying to gradually get our sewer utility first to operation sufficiency and then to financial policy and reserve sufficiency in the second kind of a step iteration. Now, under both scenarios, we were proposing to move back our charges to a one system approach where everybody, doesn't matter where you're located, pays the same type of a system, one system charge. Based on the discussion that we had during that time, the board did request for one additional scenario from that revenue requirement perspective. It was a combination scenario somewhere between scenario 1 and scenario 2, where the board still wanted to see a phase-in, but wanted that phase-in to be a little bit faster, so a little bit expedited. And we'll show you what that means in a couple of minutes. The second item that the board requested was to look at maintaining the system-specific charges and assessing those fees again, similarly on a system-specific level instead of one system type of a postage stamp type of a rate. So with that, we're going to dive straight into the results and additional scenarios, and I'll kind of outline what we're looking at. And I'm trying to keep it condensed as well as everything on one slide so you can see what was presented previously as well as the new alternative. So on this slide, we are looking at the sewer utility. We're looking at the three scenarios that are now being considered. Each table represents a scenario and it provides you a summary of the annual rate increases. These are annual percentages that would be necessary to meet our obligations within the next 5-year forecast, as well as those impacts assessed on different system rates. So you'll notice under the 2025 column for each table, you'll see what the 2025 rates in effect are for those systems. And then a system specific rate under scenario 1, which would be the same for no matter where you were connected to the system. So this would still be transitioning our structures to a one system approach under the scenario 1 we presented. Scenario 2 took 3 years to get us to a gradual phase in for operational sufficiency and then some additional rate adjustments to catch up and build up our reserves over time. Here, again, the concept looked at the rates to consolidate to a one system approach. And then lastly, a new box, scenario 3, the modified gradual phase-in, looked at slightly faster adjustment in 2026, so a slightly higher increase than scenario 2, and then leveling out with the same increases in 27 and 28. We also are showing inflation leveling increases in 29 and 30. We looked at modifying those a little bit lower, but the future reserve targets start to decline. So again, this is looking beyond the 5-year horizon. We want to make sure that we just don't fall off the cliff as well. So at the current forecast levels, we anticipate we'll just need to keep up with inflation in order for us to avoid dipping into reserves again beyond that. But the PD will definitely be revisiting those projections before any additional future increases are implemented. Now, for scenario 3, we're also now. Oh, go ahead.
Excuse me. Under scenario 2, you had said, if I'm recalling correctly, you had said it would be 2036 before we built up our reserves.
That's correct. So that was the target for scenario 2.
And under scenario 1, would we have built up our reserves by 2030? Or
no, for scenario 1, it would be right away in 26.
Okay, thank you.
And also, sorry, Commissioner Tupper. So we got to remember we're talking about an over $200,000 deficit that we're making up within these rates, correct?
That's what we were forecasting, about a $200,000 subsidy that we're seeing in year 1 without any changes or rate adjustments.
Right. So on the modified gradual phase in on 3, could you explain? I see at the bottom there's a one system charge if we just used a postage stamp rate for all 3. But why is there such a larger increase as if we just went with 3 separate rates? That's what each of those groups would pay over the course of that 5 years? Is that what the rates would look like?
Right. So if we went and continued the system specific approach, in order for us to, as an example, to collect an average rate of $91 that you're seeing under the one system approach, some systems will be higher than that and some systems will be lower than that. So the average dollar target, which generates an extra 40%, needs to be either $91 for everybody or lower for some like Calipoint and higher for others like Beckett Point and the standard systems.
And
This
what's
is
the, go ahead.
Yeah, and the methodology behind it was consistent with the prior study. We looked at direct and indirect costs that are being provided to these systems as best as the tracking information that was available, and the direct costs were allocated to each individual system uh, based on our discussions with your staff and the time tracking that was available at that time.
So I guess, and then Commissioner Collins' question, he asked on the other two, where does that put us for meeting our goal for the reserve under number 3?
So under this one, we would be somewhere in the middle by 2030 or 2031. We would be meeting our reserves as well. So we're right in the middle of those approaches. So scenario 1, it'll be year 1. Scenario 2 will be 2036, and scenario 3 will be by 2030-31. Will be projected to meet our reserves, reserve policy targets. And again, depending on how we generate actual cash on an annual basis, that may change, but based on all the variables included for consistency purposes, where because this scenario is slightly expedited version of scenario 2, it'll be a little bit sooner than scenario 2.
Thank you. Any other questions? Looks like Commissioner
Yeah,
Randall's got one.
I'm mulling. So I guess so we have this deficit of 200,000 roughly per year, and remind us how many sewer customers we have.
450.
Currently, I have an estimate of about 400 or so customers.
400. Okay, thank you. And compared to like the water customers, again, we've got about how many? What?
100.
5,200. So we've got less than 10% when you compare with one number of customers trying to cover a system cost compared to the other one. We got more than 10 times the water customers. Okay, thank you.
Let me
Commissioner Collins has a question.
Yeah.
understand there's discussion of a deficit, and that deficit would exist if we did nothing to change our rates, or is that money somehow that is owed to someone?
So at this point in time, what this deficit implies is that the sewer rates themselves are not able to cover the costs, so the water rates are providing that subsidy. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have to repay the water utility at this time. It just means in order for us to move to self-sufficiency, we would need to make this modification.
I wouldn't expect a back of the envelope calculation, but under scenario 2, the increase in 2026 were 40% rather than 30%. We would reach the replenishment of our reserves significantly sooner.
Would you mind stating that question for this scenario 2?
Maybe I wonder if Surya has answered this question. So I thought in scenario 2, he said 2036 we hit our reserve target, and in scenario 3 it was about 2031. So in the one system charge row, following that approach would get us our reserves in 2031. Correct me if I misunderstood you, Surya.
That's correct. So scenario 3 would get us to our reserves faster than scenario 2.
And what my question had to do with was if the increase in 2026 were 40% rather than 30%, then we'd meet our reserves at about the same schedule as the other two scenarios, I would think.
So I think scenario 3 is that representation, right? So if we ignore system specific rates and we just focus on the increases, scenario, unless you're saying we replace the 3% with 4.5%.
Let's just clarify. I think maybe scenario 3, because it has two things going on, is
Right.
creating a little confusion. So the commission asked for two things. So Sergey and staff came forward with scenario 1 and scenario 2. The commissioners asked two things. One is could we front load this and stop the water subsidy a little bit earlier than the scenario 2 proposal, but not as dramatic as scenario 1? So that was question 1. And question 2 was, what if we continue to try to keep the systems cost isolated? So the cost isolation is shown in the first 3 rows, and then the 4th row is the somewhat more front-loaded one system charge. So granted, there's 2 things going on.
You could insert that 91 and up where it's 84.71. It'd be basically, that would be what it would come out to.
Yeah. So changing rates to 91.23 on a system-wide basis for sewer would get us to reserve coverage earlier, like 5 years earlier than scenario 2, as I understood it.
So, and along the same point, so I was the one that was curious about what it would look like if we kept everybody in their own box, that each system was covering its own cost. And I can see that is going to be very, very painful, which takes me out of my thought of trying to do that. When I look at everything as a whole, I think we're going to wind up with a one system charge is kind of the conclusion I'm starting to come to as I look at this, which goes against kind of what I would like to see us do. But
well, if I
yeah, go ahead.
Chime in on that. I mean, that's what we've been doing. We've been breaking them out into different systems, but then when we look at and when you look at this, it's like, okay, we go to a common postage stamp cost. Call a Point is the one that's getting, I guess we're getting into discussion a little bit, and we shouldn't do that. But the point I saw was like at Call a Point when they had that huge water break, or the whole water thing that we had happen with the well and the tanks and all that massive investment that had to go into fixing that. Call a Point didn't have to cover that themselves. That was covered by all the water system customers. So if we stay in this path of everybody in their own box, it's how realistic is it to do that is kind of the question. So
go ahead, Joe.
That's right. Jeff's spot on. So first of all, our peers don't do this individualized rate making. We saw that recently with our neighbors in Clallam. We're doing that, and they've gone away from that. We don't do that in the power utility. We don't do it in the water utility. We don't do it in the fiber service that we offer. So we're unique, and when events like the Call a Point situation, that was about at least $140,000 damage impact that was essentially covered by all water customers. So if we were to try to maintain this anomaly approach of trying to keep these systems separate, there's more risk and variables associated with the reserves to keep those systems financially separated. But I'm kind of in Sergey's space now, so I'll stop.
We'll throw it back.
Right. So the one item also to note is that if we truly wanted to be so system specific, we would have to most likely do that for all systems, not just one, because as you just mentioned, this is a perfect example. Water, there was a big subsidy that happened for that area versus sewer, if we keep it system specific. Number 2 item that's really going to be important is time tracking, which is going to be, even though there's tracking right now, the level of tracking that would need to occur, it would just add significant costs, potentially requiring additional positions just for the time separating, if you're on sites, how much time spent for sewer, how much time spent for power, how much time spent for water, so on and so forth. So going to be precise in nature could cause you to incur more costs that would be borne by everybody again, but just increasing the overall cost to maintain the system. So it's a balancing act of complexity, simplicity, and an ability to track and administer the information. Every system, every point of the system gets maintained at its point of a life cycle. Some years you're maintaining and investing more in one area than the other. And if you truly track the cost that way, you can have ups and downs in cost on an annual basis. So again, that's not a way to set rates. We're looking for consistency and continuity, and we know that we're going to be maintaining all aspects and elements of the system based on their useful life and their asset replacement cycle.
Anything further on the sewer rate? All right, I guess we can move on.
I think we got another slide to show comps, but go ahead, Sergey. You got.
Yep. Yeah, and this is just returning the same slide because there are more and more scenarios, and there's three system rates right now. We didn't want to make it extremely busy, so we're just showing you your current rates in place right now in comparison to alike utilities. So again, this is not your necessarily neighbors because you are so unique in the type of sewer system that you have. So as we discussed last time, we tried to find as best comparables as possible where these are kind of step systems or non-treatment type systems, septic systems, and so on. So that's why they're not quite exactly your neighbors or other types of utilities. In general, depending on the system, you're in the low to middle spectrum of the comparison. That we know a lot of these systems are having similar increases. I can tell you personally, working with rates that normal systems, because of all the regulation around the region, are normal sewer standard systems with treatment plants are going up substantially as well. So this is not a phenomenon just around this area. But as always, every system is unique. So just this is a little bit of an apples and oranges type of comparison. That's sewer. Now we'll just quickly go through water because of the subsidy that's occurring. The scenarios are directly tied for the water utility to the sewer utility. So that's why you'll notice the naming of the scenarios is tied to sewer. So scenario one for water will be strictly tied to self-sufficiency by 2026 for the sewer utility. The quicker that this subsidy is removed, the faster the relief will come for the water rate pressure as well. So you'll notice that the increases for scenario one are the lowest because there's no more subsidy occurring in 26 and thereafter under this alternative. The debt service we showed you stays the same for this scenario, and the impacts we showed you on the typical residential bill using 4,200 gallons on the monthly basis are the same, about $3 per month under this alternative. The gradual phase in with the 30% increases as you saw for the sewer utility for 3 years would still require some subsidy in the next 2 years, about $293,000 worth over those 2 years, which would increase the rate pressure slightly up to about 5% from 4.25% per year for the next 3 years. And then lastly, the modified approach will be somewhere in the middle because we're expediting the phase in, but not fully eliminating the subsidy. So the subsidy will go down to about $223,000, but still be there for 2 years. The debt service will be the same. It's just the increases will be a little bit less than 5%, about 4.75. So that's the main difference. We also brought back the rates themselves here for the basic charges. The schedule is a little bit more expanded because we do have different basic fixed monthly charges. You can see depending on the type of a connection, type of customer we have here, as well as the volumetric charges. We are showing you the tables for scenario three only, just because we would have 9 or more slides if we showed the tables for each scenario. We showed you scenario two last time. This was the new scenario requested. So all we're doing is applying the overall average increase, either 4.25 or 4.75 in the case of scenario three, to the current rates in place. You'll notice we're separating residential and CalaPoint rates on their own, but they are the same. In the past, historically, they were slightly different. We did consolidate them during the last rate study, but we are still assessing the same uh, residential rates for both areas now. So that transition has occurred since last rate study.
Hey, Sergey, I had a question.
Yeah.
Back on the previous slide, page 29 of the packet, proposed basic charges. I just had a question of under Cala Point, it's got village and B2 and B4. And I was just kind of curious what types of service those were, if you know, or if Jose can answer the question.
I would have to double check exactly what they are. That's how they're classified in the rate schedule. Those are just I forget the building associated with those connections,
Okay.
but it has a different meter size as well. So we can
Okay, so
definitely
maybe
double check.
maybe like Village. I don't know if that's our community center, so it's got a much higher basic rate, and B2 and B3 are other bigger buildings that have. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we can definitely follow up with it more.
That's no follow up needed. I just
Okay.
couldn't figure out what those were for, but that makes sense.
Okay. And then really what's left is the comparative survey. Here's this residential survey for a typical residential a connection with 4,200 gallons of monthly usage. Right now, you're on the lower end of the middle of the comparison. We know that a lot of these utilities are going through similar type studies and will be applying increases of their own. But again, each utility is unique. They provide service to different topography, demographics, the level of service. Their system of their age of their systems are different as well. So it's a little bit of a apples and oranges comparison to do that directly. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. Really, we're looking for your feedback. We have three scenarios: the original two from the December 2nd meeting, as well as the new scenario 3, which is somewhere in the middle of those two scenarios. That's the first feedback that we're looking for. Which of those three that are you comfortable with? And then the second layer of feedback that we're looking for is really for the sewer utility rate structure. Do we want to keep the rates by system, or do we want to move forward and consolidate them into one system type of a charge?
Yeah, if I could just tag on to the close of Sergey's presentation, I'd draw two other conclusions from this presentation. We've learned that the water utilities rates and the sewer rates being proposed are competitive with our peers, approximately in the middle of the peer group, and that the water utility continues to demonstrate good affordability and keeping their rates within the range of inflation, and that cost performance and affordability, I think, is something that the community should be proud of, whichever scenario we end up with. And thankful Joseph Barkle is here with he's part of the water team focusing on sewer, and team is led by Jose, and I'm just proud of the way that team is performing and maintaining the affordability of this critical resource for our community. So
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Sergey. So we'll tackle this on the revenue requirement. I guess the first thing I would say is, does Sergey and staff still feel comfortable with the meter size or the size of the pipe and all that sort of thing, the rates, the gallon charges, the usage charges? Are you still comfortable? Is there anything that would change us looking at that revenue that we would gain from those rates that we're going to put in there? I don't have anything I want to change in that, but
I'm sorry, I'm not quite clear.
when you look at the size of the pipe, 5/8, inch and a quarter, all those different rates that we charge back there, that's what the revenue is going to be based on, is the meter, type of meter, commercial, residential, whatever, and then the size of the piping and the gallons used. So that's really where, we obviously have a base rate too, and the capacity fee or the capital fee. So, but as far as revenue goes, I don't see anything in there that I would want to change the staff. And Sergey's still comfortable that the numbers you've given us on everything, that nothing needs to be tweaked there.
On the water side.
On the water side. Yes, strictly on the water side.
Yeah, at this point in time, we didn't see a need for a holistic revision of the rate structure itself. Our goal, again, especially this time around, we did some tweaks last time. This time around is to generate the sufficient revenues to meet our obligations. And this type of adjustment provides you the least disruption in terms of which customers will be impacted by what. So it provides you the most continuity from a revenue generation perspective. So I will still be comfortable keeping the structure in place.
Yeah, because just as an example, I think it was like a 2 cent per gallon on the basic residential fee. A 2 cent per gallon increase is what we were looking at, if I remember right, if memory serves. So just wondering if we're still all good with those numbers as a base for revenue generation. So then we move on to the options we have, right?
Did you want to see if there's any public comment before we?
We could. Is there any? We could ask for some public comment at this stage, I guess. We still haven't really made any decisions yet.
I guess you're running the meeting.
No, go ahead.
The way I like to run it was to staff report, clarifying questions, see if there's any public comment based on what we heard, and then we can go to discussion and decision is how I have been trying to run it. But
yeah, well, again, I was just going by the holding public comment till each presentation is done, but before we vote. So we're not coming to a vote yet. So I guess it's when we want to ask for that comment back is fine. I guess not a lot of comment going to be given because there's not very much public.
There may not be anybody there. And I guess the reason I like to do it that way is because I like to hear what the public concerns are before we discuss.
Well, I guess I'd ask, is there any other board input on that particular thing that I brought up?
No, not from me.
on the rates and the size of, depending on the meter and that?
No,
On
no,
that stuff,
no.
on that portion of, I know it wasn't included in here in detail, but it was part of what's going into this decision. So,
I think the water side is a success. Frankly, when you look at the water rates, it's like, this is what we want, small increases over time.
right.
So, yeah.
So again, I guess I'll go ahead and ask, is there any public comment on the revenue requirement part of the presentation from the public? I don't see any hands popping up.
Okay.
So we'll stay with the board then on revenue requirement. That takes us to the rates.
Yeah.
That are being proposed. We have three options. And it did say here recommended action was staff was looking apparently for a motion to approve the water rates tonight. So I guess that's one of the questions. Do we feel like we can do that tonight, or is there?
Well, I have a question on that, and it's the effective date. And in the past, when we've talked about water rate increases, we've talked about doing it closer to the end of the electric. I guess. No, we talk about doing it in the winter
Water
because
is January.
So I guess my only concern there is if we increase the rates now, it's also at the same time that those customers have their highest electric rates. So since we're not affecting the water rates in this case, we're affecting the sewer rates. Might we delay it a little bit, or I hate to say phase in again, because I think where I'm going to land is probably on number one, even though it's the fastest rate increase. It gets us to the reserves the soonest, and overall it gets the pain over the soonest, and we end up with the lowest bill. But I guess I was wondering, should we maybe not make it February 1 to institute all that, since people have higher electric bills at the same time?
I don't have a problem with delaying to March or even April. But I do want to propose scenario 4, if you will.
Okay.
Which would be scenario 2, except that the 2026 increase would be 40% rather than 30%.
Hold on, I'm trying to get that one. For some reason, I can't
Are
find.
you back on sewer?
Okay, so I'm back on the page. So Ken, would you mind saying that one more time? So it'd be
What I'm saying is, if you look at scenario 2, increasing by 40% rather than 30% in year 2026.
Okay.
Well, that's basically the same as number 3, isn't it? If we just went with the one system charge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Okay. And I had a question on that one, because I was looking at that one also. If we adopted the same fee for everybody under system 3, scenario 3, Sergey, maybe you already answered this. When do we get to the reserves being satisfied under scenario 3?
Approximately 2031.
2031. Okay.
Commissioner Randall, if I could address 2 of the points you brought up. So what is common in our industry, so boards often try to bring rate gradualism into the conversation. And so one of the ways that you can do that is by seasonally choosing when you're going to implement rates. So it's common in our industry for us to try to implement water rates at a time of low utilization.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, as Gene was saying, January, February, winter is important. That way, as use starts to go up, customers start seeing that feedback on a more incremental basis. We do the exact same thing in power. We don't try to increase power rates in the middle of the highest months of consumption. We try to adjust those rates as we did in July when the power utilization is lower, and then they start seeing that cost feedback as it starts scaling in through the fall and into the winter. So it's just a way of helping customers see what the cost increases are on an incremental basis. As far as delaying past February, we're running a deficit on the water and sewer system. So that just means we're running that deficit longer, which puts us further behind in being able to get to a place where we're meeting our expectations for reserves. So that would be the downside of a delay from February.
Okay. I had one other follow-up on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm a city customer, so I get a PUD bill only for electricity. So when we have a customer that's got water, sewer, and electric, do they just get one PUD bill?
Yes.
And then does it have,
Yeah.
you owe this amount is the whole thing? And then do we break it out by water, sewer, and electric?
Yes, we do.
So they can pretty easily see this is part of my bill is my $500 bill is this how much is it's electric, this is how much water, this is how much sewer.
Yeah,
Yes.
being one of those customers, it's very comprehensive. Easy to understand what you're being charged for, and
And I guess I get Joe's point now that if I had one of those bills, which I don't, I would see that the water part of my bill is lower at this time of year. So if we institute the
Yeah.
increase sooner, it's going to be less of a jump than it would be if we wait later.
Yeah, based a lot upon what Joe put forward and what Gene alluded to as well, is I think it makes sense to stay on the pace that we've been on in the past and what's being projected here for a myriad of reasons. But most foremost is to put this in effect, so because there's going to be a lag. A lot of people, if they see that increase, they'll be able to question us and then get to understand. No matter how hard we try, we're never going to get everybody informed, whether it's the newsletter, it's on the bill, whatever we do, robocalls. If we do it earlier, then they will have that time to adjust their usage when it really does become more critical, rather than not figure it out until they're in the middle of a season where they do have to use the water. So I'm more in favor of the February timeline.
Yeah, I kind of dropped my opposition to it now that I understand what that's applying to, that that it's at a lower point at that point.
yeah,
I
that
get
makes
that now.
sense.
I didn't
That
get it
makes sense.
initially. So where does that leave us?
So going back to,
Should we talk about whether we prefer one level
well,
postage stamp charge?
I guess does it matter whether we decide on sewer first or water first? Does one have to happen before the other? I guess that's one question I would ask.
They're interrelated. Maybe Sergey can answer that more precisely.
Yeah, since they are so directly tied to each other, driven by what we do for sewer impacts water, I would say you can choose sewer and it technically has to follow through with water.
And basically, whatever we do tonight, we'd be directing staff to prepare a resolution to come back to us with the effective changes at a later date, correct? Okay. And Joe's nodding his head for those on audio.
Well, I guess the question I would ask is if we went with, not that we're going to, if we went with sewer self-sufficient, which is the right up front paying everything, which is kind of what we alluded to you wanted to do on the water side, do you have to do the number one scenario for both if you choose the number one for sewer?
It didn't follow.
Well, if you choose the number one sewer proposal, do the water rates have to be the number one proposal on the water side?
They're correlated.
You don't have to, you just generate more cash. So in this case, it's a scenario one would allow you to, I'm just going to go there now. So scenario one's the highest up front for sewer. So if we look at water, it generates the lowest increase for water. Now, if we wanted to, this gets way into the weeds, but if you could technically still go with scenario two for water, you would just generate more cash. That cash can help you build up higher reserves potentially, or give you more freedom and flexibility to address costs in the future. But from a forecasting perspective, scenario one allows you to have a lower increase.
So it sounds like we picked their recommendation is we pick the sewer path first, and that drives the water path unless we want higher revenue collection on water than is necessary. Okay.
Yeah. So again, it brings us back to sewer then. Are we prepared to do anything with the sewer tonight? I know Commissioner Collins, he's going to meet with Beckett Point, it sounded like. Do you expect anything?
Actually, Beckett Point will meet with us on the 20th.
Okay.
That's right.
They'll be here.
Well, I guess the question I have is, do we support a postage stamp rate, or do we support the broken out rates? That seems to be.
I think I'm going to have to, as it goes against my grain of the way I'd like to see us do it. I just looking at the numbers, I think we're going to have to go with a postage stamp type of a rate. Unfortunately.
I think if we keep it embedded in the rate structure, I'll just call it a genetic flaw that's going to get worse over time, and we're going to regret it. And I think the simpler things were, I mean, if you had a business with two customers, you could give those two customers completely different experiences. So you only have two customers. You got 400 customers amongst 3 different systems or 5 different systems. That gets hard. And if you're trying to cover your costs, so it just doesn't seem like a sustainable model to keep them separate. And it masks when we get these big breaks of how do you do that fairly. So it's kind of a,
So is there a consensus that the postage stamp is probably where we're going to wind up?
yeah, we have
Yeah.
3 heads nodding.
Okay, so then it comes down to which rate, and I know Commissioner Collins asked about the 40% in the second, the S2, but I think that is basically S3.
I think it's S3.
Because we've done away with the individual charges, so we're really looking at S3 as being the option if we wanted to do it that way. The other option is the full boat. We just double well, not necessarily, some doubled, some are more, if we just went with the full tune-up right now. And I don't think we can do that. Unfortunately, I just don't think we could do that to our customers.
So under scenario 3, you'd start off with $91 for everybody in 2026 and 118 in 2027, and then
Yes.
and then it flips, and then it's less expensive that
Right.
way than scenario 1.
The key was to build that reserve or
Right.
whatever a little quicker.
And then by 2028, it's a little more expensive than scenario 1, but not that much more expensive. So I would definitely, I could support scenario 3 with a levelized.
Yeah, and I don't know what
postage
that
stamp
will
rate.
do with your discussions with Beckett, because they obviously, they're going to be hit differently than the others from what they've
Actually,
been
that
used.
Beckett, when I talked with Kevin Campfield, he had stated that their preference would be for postage stamp rates. And, they did a study, they hired an engineer who in fact had designed the system initially. And a lot of the discussion that we've had historically with the folks at Beckett Point had to do with the differential between what they thought the cost should be and our calculation of the cost. So the path of least resistance is to go with a postage stamp rate, which they would have. Nobody's going to be happy about the rate increase, but there will be less consternation if we just have a common rate for all of the systems.
Ken, have you had conversations with Calla Point folks? Because they're the ones who would see the biggest increase.
Have not.
Okay.
I have not.
But I guess coming back to Calla Point, the example that could be used with them is that water system break and how they didn't have to absorb all those costs. So that's,
They saw a benefit from the old.
they saw a benefit from postage
Yeah.
stamp there. So.
Yes.
So there's some
So-
trade-offs.
Yeah,
behind
and
it.
it's really consistent with how we do our other charges anyway.
Yeah.
That's right.
So do we have consensus
I
on
think we
scenario
do, yeah.
3?
Sounds like
postage
we
stamp rate?
do, unless.
Okay.
So, Mr. President, if you would consider it, we could actually pass a motion to do that, and then we can bring back that resolution and the consent agenda for next week or next
Okay.
meeting as well.
Well, I'll make the motion then that we direct staff to proceed with scenario 3 with a postage stamp rate on sewer and the corresponding scenarios with water, and bring that back as a resolution at the next, when you can, at the next available meeting that you're ready to do that.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Well, discussion. So I guess my question was Sergey did allude to that we could end up with one of the other rate schedules for water if we took 3. So does Sergey have an idea of which revenue scenario on rates for water we would tie to this number 3?
With 3 as well. So in this case,
Okay.
this modified gradual approach would be 4.75% adjustments.
There's almost no, it's like pennies difference.
From an impact perspective, that's correct. Looking at 26, difference between scenario 2 of a monthly impact of $3.32 versus scenario 3, $3.19. A typical residential customer would not see a significant difference.
Right, because this will come back on consent. I ask that so that people, if they listen to the recording or they see this or they see it on consent, they'll understand why the water rate was tied the way it is to the motion to take the sewer option.
Yeah.
So,
The difference between the water scenario
Yeah.
though is like 20 cents a month.
Yeah.
You know,
So
it's not
any
significant.
other further discussion on the motion?
And then keep the February 1, and this would have the
Yeah.
February 1 implementation date. Okay.
Yeah.
Presumably. All right.
I didn't, if you want to could you
Nope,
repeat the
that's it.
motion? Does anyone
Yep.
want to repeat the motion? Because I didn't write it down.
So
And I just ask that the effective date be made bills rendered February 5th or later. That breaks the revenue month cleanly.
okay.
Okay.
So modify the motion so that the effective date would be upon bills February 5th or later.
So does Shannon have something captured that she could
Can
read?
I have everybody accepting that?
Yeah, I accept
modification?
the amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. So
Okay, is there a chance you could read back
You-
how
you
that will
captured-
read in the motion?
Not in a formal way, but yes. Scenario 3 with postage stamp rates effective date of February 5th or later is what I captured.
February,
bills
Yep.
Yeah.
going out February 5th or later.
and it was scenario 3 for the sewer.
Scenario 3 for the sewer.
Okay, any other discussion on the language or the content of the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 So now it's water under the bridge.
Maybe
Water-
over the bridge.
Water down the drain.
Okay, so where are we at here? So we finished unfinished business 8.1. So now we'll move on to new business, item number 9 on the agenda, and 9.1, yearly conflict of interest disclosure. Joel, did you want to do a little primer before we
Sure.
our piece?
Thank you
So
for your time,
this-
everybody.
Sorry,
Thanks,
Sergey.
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 Good
Thanks for
work.
good work, Sergey, and hanging with us as we dodged and ducked and did all the various things.
Yep,
Always
thanks.
a pleasure.
Okay, so we move on from sewer and water rates to your annual obligation as required in your governance policies that you publicly disclose any conflicts of interest that's required under state law 4223.010. We've gone through this on an annual basis. And RCW 4223 prohibits commissioners from using their positions to secure special privileges or special exemptions for themselves or others, and from entering into certain defined contracts or having other personal financial interests with the district. There's 4 scenarios that are laid out here. I'm happy to read those to you if you'd like me to. If not, you can just publicly affirm that you have no conflicts of interest with the district as sitting and elected commissioners.
Do we
Would you
need
like
to
me
hear-
to review the 1 through 4 here?
Sure, if it's not going to take very long.
It shouldn't. I'm pretty fast talker, Ken. So a commissioner may not use their position to secure special privileges or exemptions for themselves or others. A commissioner may not give, receive, or agree to receive directly or indirectly any compensation, gift, reward, or gratuity from a source except the employing municipality, in this case, the PUD, for a matter connected with or related to the officer's services as such an officer. A commissioner may not accept employment or engage in business or professional activity that they might reasonably expect would require or induce them by reason of their official position to disclose confidential information acquired by reason of their official position. Or a commissioner may not disclose confidential information gained by reason of their position, nor may they otherwise use such information for their personal gain or benefit.
So I'll go ahead and go first. So it's Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3. I am not aware of any conflicts of interest that would interfere with my ability to fulfill my obligations to the PUD or as Commissioner for District 3.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, I'll go next. Jeff Randall, Commissioner for District 1, and I am not aware of any conflict of interest that I have pursuant to RCW 42.23.010 that would prevent me from conducting my responsibilities as a commissioner either.
Thank you.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner for District 2. I will affirm that I have no conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Thanks, commissioners.
Thank you. So with that, we will move on to 9.2, the bid award for the coil water main replacement project.
So, Jefferson County PUD solicited, bids for oil water main replacement project. A total of 8 bids, came in. Bid opening was December 3rd. Staff in coordination with HDR, reviewed all submitted bids. All bids were evaluated for responsiveness, qualifications, and compliance with the bid requirements. Following this review, Pacific Civil and Infrastructure, PCI, was determined to be lowest responsive bidder. The bid total was $1,336,000, inclusive of tax. The funding for this project is in our water operations budget. No additional funding sources are required. Subject to the board's approval, staff anticipates construction start date approximately February 5th. More detailed schedule once we finalize and discuss with the contract. Staff recommends the board approve the award of construction contract to Pacific Civil and Infrastructure in the amount of $1,336,000 at this board meeting, allowing the project to proceed on schedule within the approval of our budget.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I had one question, and that I wasn't clear on if this was the awarded bid or this is the estimated cost. Did we have an estimated cost on this project before we went out to bid?
2.7.
That's amazing.
Especially in today's world.
Yeah. Except
So I know the board asked, I think maybe it's the last meeting or one of our last meetings, for a little more information when we do these type of bids. Obviously, there were a lot of bids on this. I'm just kind of curious, is that I'm not familiar with this contractor. Were there any local bids or were they all from outside, or
We had
how familiar are we with the bidders?
pretty familiar with them. We had Broadlands, we had Pat Bay, Earthworks, who's local, Northland Construction, Interwest, MNG Construction, Northwest Cascade. We had quite a bit of interest at our pre-bid meetings. We had about 16 or so contractors attend them. And we had 8 some bids. PCI has been around.
And they were the lowest bid, or did
They
we?
were the lowest bid.
They met the criteria and were the lowest bid? Okay. Because I know we had a request from the public about this bid as well. I know you responded. Is there anything about this bid that triggered a public response back to us about this particular project? Do we know, or have you talked?
No, I don't think it was
Okay.
the project as a whole, as a community at the COIL is curious about the project. And we all know that this has been on, discussions over the years. And I think that's what prompted.
Okay, Commissioner?
So I move that the Board of Commissioners authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Pacific Civil and Infrastructure for the coil water main replacement project.
I will second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 I do have one question. How much more work down on the coil is there to kind of fix their system up? Is this kind of the end of it, or is there more to come?
This is to replace 99% of it.
Man, that's been a long time coming. It's like
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from how the PUD acquired that system, but I think we're looking forward to it being a much more robust system that's not drawing our resources to repairs on a regular basis.
Mhm.
And just to be clear, Dan, there's no controversy. There's just interest by the community and then we're trying to help them understand what the scope of the project is. So,
Right. Nope, I didn't believe there was. I just, like I said, I was copied that there were some questions from the area, and I just want to make sure that they saw that I had seen that as well. So,
Just off the top of my head, we've been out there about 140 something times since we've taken that system.
yeah, a lot. So we have one more item, 9.3. I moved forward from the consent agenda, which was the resolution on the certifier for the PUD for the RUS loan programs. I was a little curious, in the header for that, it said reconnect, but when I look at the resolution, it doesn't really call out reconnect. It calls, and when you look at the second page of it, it calls out two different loan forms, 481 and 595, but then there's another number for six something, was it 625 in the RUS form 675. So just was curious about all the different loan numbers or form numbers, exactly which loans are these signers being attached to? Is this the original RUS loan? Is this the telecom loan? Is it both? Just a little more clarification on, no argument on the signers. I realize we had some housekeeping to do, but just curious about the forms and what this is all attached to, is what the signers are going to be looking to go for RUS for in a way of revenue or paying or whatever it may be. So a little clarification if we could.
I'm not aware that we're recharacterizing the loan. We're just assigning the interim finance director to the existing loans that we have, 481 and 595. So I'm not sure I'm understanding the question.
So basically these are existing loans.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're literally swapping out names.
We're not seeking different borrowing authority or recharacterizing the loans as just
Okay.
swapping out the names.
Swapping out names.
Right.
Okay.
Because there was the certificate of authority, it looked a little different than the resolution. I was just
Well,
curious for clarification.
Maybe Amanda's going to correct me.
I'm not gonna correct you. I just want to confirm that the forms are specific to how we submit and ask for the money back within the loan. So it's, again, not a change of the loan. It's just there's two different forms. Will, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe one is submitted by Finley, the 595.
No.
Okay. The
So-
481 is the one that we directly submit when we're asking to draw down the loan.
And are you talking about, Dan, it's referring to form 675 in the
Yeah.
reso?
Yeah, in this, but when you look at the certificate of authority, it
Two different
shows
forms.
different form numbers. So I'm just making sure that we've got the two things are synced, that the resolution does match the certificate of authority for what we're doing it for, not who's doing it. I'm fine with that. I get that part of it, just to
Oh.
make sure.
This is form 675.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Bottom.
Okay.
Teeny tiny print.
So
Correct.
yeah, you use Form 675 to submit this change that relates to the two loans that we have, and the resolution authorizes the submittal by you of Form 675. That's how I read it.
It's us not having to keep track of the forms.
Well, again, I just wanted to make sure that we had dotted the i's and crossed the t's. So
Everything's in order.
yes, no.
Commissioner Collins has a question.
Actually, I have a motion that we approve the resolution appointing the general manager as the certifier and the finance director to comply. I think I have a problem with the structure of that sentence. Appointing the general manager as the certifier and the finance director, what? To comply with filing? Okay. To comply with filing requirements under the Rural Utility Service Loan Program.
I'll second the motion. I think it's federal government language that makes sense to somebody, but doesn't make sense to an English major.
So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. So again, just because that was kind of a housekeeping, I get that, but without seeing it before, I have to pull it out of consent to ask questions about it. So it'd be,
No, that was fine.
yeah, I think it would be helpful in the future if we know we're going to have housekeeping like that, that may lead to a question that maybe, would you prefer we come to you before the meetings and ask for clarification, or should we have a first touch type just for process moving forward?
I guess I better follow up with you. I'm not understanding what the point of confusion is, but I'll seek to do that and try to bring what the commission needs in advance.
Yeah. Things that go into consent, again, if we haven't seen it, it's kind of tough to pass on stuff that we not familiar with. So anyhow, beyond that, that takes care of our scheduled business. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
I'll just say, I think that was a fine use of consent. Staff thought it was consent. You had a fairly simple question. I don't see it as a problem that we pulled it off and we quickly dealt with it. So
No,
I think it's okay.
Exactly. And I just wanted to clarify so that I don't have to, don't want to pull stuff off.
No,
So,
that's not
yeah.
not a
Nope,
problem.
Not a problem.
I mean, they're using their discretion as to what they think is probably consent.
Yeah. Anyhow, anything else for the good of the order?
Happy New Year.
All right, thanks, everybody. And 20th is our next meeting, correct? Or do we know we have a special meeting? So, all right. It is, what is the time? It is 5:35 and I'm going to adjourn us at 5:35. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.